Chapter 1: The Mask of Strength, a Depressed Man. The silent war inside the male mind. There is a battle that takes place every day, a battle that millions of people will never see. It does not happen on a battlefield. There are no weapons. There are no visible wounds. There is no enemy standing in front of the person fighting. The battlefield exists inside the human mind, and the person fighting this battle may look completely normal from the outside. He wakes up every morning. He gets dressed. He goes to work. He answers questions. He solves problems. He takes care of responsibilities. He smiles when people expect him to smile. And when someone asks him, "How are you doing?" he responds with two simple words, "I'm fine." But sometimes those two words hide a war. Throughout history, society has admired the strength of men, the man who provides, the man who protects, the man who remains calm during crisis, the man who carries responsibility when others cannot. From ancient warriors to modern fathers, strength has often been associated with endurance. A strong man was expected to stand firm when everything around him was falling apart. But history reveals a question that is rarely asked. What happens when the person carrying the weight becomes exhausted from carrying it? A man can carry many things. He can carry financial pressure. He can carry family expectations. He can carry the responsibility of caring for others. He can carry disappointment. He can carry failure. He can carry the expectations of an entire society. But the heaviest weight is often the one nobody sees, the weight inside his own mind. The tragedy of many struggling men is not that they have no strength. The tragedy is that they have learned to hide their suffering so well that nobody realizes they are suffering. They become experts at appearing okay. They learn how to enter a room and look confident while feeling lost. They learn how to make others laugh while fighting sadness. They learn how to give advice while secretly needing advice themselves. They learn how to support everyone while quietly wondering, "Who supports me?" Psychologist Carl Jung described a powerful concept called the persona. The persona is the mask we present to the world. It is the version of ourselves we create so we can function within society. The successful person, the confident person, the person who has everything under control. The persona is not necessarily fake. It serves a purpose. We all need a social identity. We all need the ability to perform our responsibilities. But Jung warned that problems appear when the mask becomes so strong that we lose connection with the person underneath. A man can become trapped inside his own image. He becomes known as the strong one, the reliable one, the person who never breaks, and eventually he begins to believe that he is not allowed to break. This creates a dangerous contradiction. Society tells men, "Be strong," but many men misunderstand strength. They believe strength means never feeling fear, never feeling sadness, never needing help, never admitting uncertainty. But that is not strength. That is emotional isolation. True strength is not the absence of struggle. A mountain is not strong because storms never touch it. A mountain is strong because it remains standing despite the storms. The same is true for human beings. Strength is not pretending that pain does not exist. Strength is having the courage to face pain honestly. Many men learn early in life that showing emotion can be dangerous. A young boy falls and hurts himself. He cries. Someone tells him, "Be a man." A young boy experiences disappointment. He becomes emotional. Someone tells him, "Don't be weak." A young boy feels afraid. Someone tells him men are not supposed to be scared. Slowly he begins learning a lesson. Certain feelings are unacceptable. Certain emotions must be hidden. The problem is that emotions do not disappear because they are ignored. A feeling that is buried does not die. It waits. Pain that is never processed does not vanish. It transforms. Sometimes it becomes anger. Sometimes it becomes bitterness. Sometimes it becomes emotional numbness. Sometimes it becomes depression. A man who cannot express sadness may express anger. A man who cannot admit fear may become controlling. A man who cannot acknowledge loneliness may convince himself that he does not need anyone. The emotion changes its appearance, but the pain remains. This is why male depression can be difficult to recognize. Depression does not always look like crying. Sometimes it looks like silence. Sometimes it looks like exhaustion. Sometimes it looks like a man working 16 hours a day because stopping means confronting what he feels. Sometimes it looks like a man surrounded by people but feeling completely alone. The world often notices a man's final collapse, but it rarely notices the years before the collapse. Nobody sees the nights he struggled to sleep. Nobody sees the thoughts he fought in silence. Nobody sees the moments when he questioned his own worth. People see the breakdown. They rarely see the burden that came before it. The psychologist Alfred Adler studied the human desire to overcome feelings of inadequacy. Every human being experiences moments of feeling small, moments where we feel behind, moments where we question ourselves. A healthy person uses these feelings as motivation to grow. But when failure becomes connected to identity, something changes. A man stops thinking, "I failed at something," and starts thinking, "I am a failure." This difference is enormous. Failure is an event. Failure is something that happened. But shame attacks identity. Shame says, "This is who you are." And when a person begins believing that message, the battle becomes internal. A depressed man is often not fighting only external problems. He is fighting the story he has created about himself. A lost job becomes, "I am useless." A broken relationship becomes, "I am unlovable." A mistake becomes, "I ruin everything." The mind becomes a courtroom where the person is both the accused and the judge. But history teaches us that darkness does not define a person. Some of the greatest individuals who ever lived experienced deep internal struggles. Abraham Lincoln experienced periods of profound sadness and personal difficulty. Winston Churchill described his depression as his black dog. Viktor Frankl endured unimaginable suffering and discovered the importance of meaning. Their struggles did not make them worthless. Their struggles became part of their story. The first step toward rebuilding a man is not forcing him to become harder. It is helping him understand that his humanity is not a weakness. A man can be strong and still struggle. A man can be responsible and still need support. A man can be respected and still have wounds. The mask of strength protects a man from judgment. But if worn forever, it can also prevent healing. Because a wound hidden forever cannot be treated. A problem denied cannot be solved. A person who refuses to acknowledge pain cannot transform pain. The beginning of healing is the moment a man becomes honest with himself. Not, "I am weak, but I am carrying something heavy." Not, "I have failed, but I am facing a difficult season." Not, "My life is over, but I have reached a point where something must change." The strongest men are not those who never fall. The strongest men are those who are willing to confront what caused the fall. Because before a man can rebuild himself, he must first remove the mask. He must finally see the person beneath it. And he must ask the question that begins every transformation. What pain have I been carrying that nobody else can see? Chapter 2: The Boy Who Learned to Hide a Depressed Man. The silent war inside the male mind. Before there is a depressed man, there is usually a younger version of that man. A child, a boy who is learning what the world expects from him. A boy who is trying to answer some of the deepest questions a human being can ask. Am I valuable? Am I accepted? Am I enough? Who am I supposed to become? The answers he receives during childhood can shape the person he becomes decades later. A man is not created overnight. His beliefs about himself are built slowly. They are built through thousands of moments. A father's words, a mother's encouragement, a teacher's criticism, a friend's acceptance, a moment of failure, a moment of achievement, a moment when he needed support and whether someone was there. Childhood is not simply preparation for adulthood. Childhood is where many people first learn how to experience life. It is where they learn how to deal with pain, how to handle disappointment, how to respond to failure, how to trust others, how to see themselves. For many boys, one of the earliest lessons they receive is connected to strength. They are told, "Be brave, be tough, don't give up." These lessons can be valuable. A child needs resilience. A child needs courage. A child needs to learn that difficulties can be overcome. But there is a difference between teaching resilience and teaching emotional silence. Resilience says, life will be difficult, but you can face it. Emotional suppression says, your pain is unacceptable. These two messages may look similar from the outside, but psychologically, they create very different outcomes. A boy who learns resilience understands, I can feel pain and still continue. A boy who learns suppression believes, if I feel pain, something is wrong with me. This difference becomes important when that boy grows into a man. Because life eventually brings moments where strength alone is not enough. There will be loss, rejection, failure, grief, fear, uncertainty. And in those moments, a person needs more than endurance. They need emotional understanding. The role of fathers and mentors throughout history. Boys have often learned manhood through observation. A boy watches the men around him and silently asks, how does a man behave? He learns from how his father handles pressure, how he treats people, how he responds when he fails, how he communicates, how he takes responsibility. A father is not only someone who provides material needs. A father can also provide psychological foundations. He teaches, you are capable. You can face challenges. Your mistakes do not define you. You are loved even when you fail. The absence of this guidance can create uncertainty. Not because every boy without a father is destined to struggle. Many men overcome difficult childhoods and become extraordinary people. But because every young person needs examples of maturity. Every child needs someone who can show, this is what responsible adulthood looks like. The greatest need of a child is not perfection from parents. No parent is perfect. The deeper need is consistency. Someone who shows, I am here, you matter, you are not alone. When children lack guidance, they often search for it elsewhere. Sometimes they find positive examples, teachers, coaches, relatives, community leaders, mentors. Sometimes they find negative examples, peer pressure, destructive groups, online influences, people who offer identity without wisdom. A young man without direction does not stop searching for meaning. He simply searches wherever meaning appears available. The first wounds of shame. Many adults carry childhood experiences they never processed. A boy is laughed at. A boy is constantly criticized. A boy feels invisible. A boy believes he is never good enough. These moments may appear small to others, but to a child they can become powerful messages. A child does not always think, my environment is unhealthy. A child often thinks, something is wrong with me. This is how shame begins. Shame is different from guilt. Guilt says I did something wrong. Shame says I am wrong. Guilt can motivate improvement. Shame attacks identity. A man carrying childhood shame may spend his entire life trying to prove he is worthy. He may chase money, success, recognition, status, approval. Not because these things are bad, but because he hopes they will finally answer the question, am I enough? The boy never learned to fail. Another important part of development is learning how to fail. Failure is one of life's greatest teachers. A child who experiences healthy failure learns, I can make mistakes and recover. But a child who is protected from every challenge may grow into an adult who fears failure. Because adulthood eventually demands taking risks, facing rejection, making decisions, accepting mistakes. A man who believes failure is proof of his worthlessness will avoid challenges. He will protect himself from disappointment, but in protecting himself from failure, he may also protect himself from growth. The lost transition from boyhood to manhood. Many traditional societies had clear pathways from childhood into adulthood. Young men were given challenges, responsibilities, mentors, skills, tests of character. The message was, you are becoming someone capable of carrying responsibility. Modern society has changed. Many young men receive adulthood without initiation. They receive freedom without guidance, choices without wisdom, information without experience, comfort without challenge. The question becomes, how does a boy know he has become a man? Is it age, money, physical strength, social status, or something deeper? A mature man is not simply someone who grows older. A mature man is someone who develops responsibility, self-control, courage, humility, purpose, the ability to serve others. Carl Jung and the unfinished Femme Carl Jung believed that human development requires becoming whole. A person must integrate different parts of themselves. The child, the adult, the emotional self, the rational self, the hidden self. Many men reach adulthood physically but remain emotionally trapped in old wounds. The child who felt rejected still seeks approval. The boy who felt powerless still seeks control. The young man who felt inadequate still tries to prove himself. Healing requires returning to those forgotten parts. Not to live in the past, but to understand how the past shaped the present. The depressed man is sometimes carrying pain that began long before depression appeared. The exhaustion may be recent, the wounds may be old. A man may think, why am I struggling now? But the deeper question may be, what have I been carrying for years? The journey toward becoming a stronger man does not begin by pretending the past did not happen. It begins by understanding it. Because a man cannot rebuild a life on foundations he refuses to examine. The boy who learned to hide eventually becomes the man who hides. But the story does not have to end there. The same boy who learned silence can learn expression. The same boy who learned fear can learn courage. The same boy who learned to hide can learn to stand openly. Because becoming a man is not about never having wounds. It is about becoming wise enough to heal them. Chapter 3: The Weight Men Carry a Depressed Man. The silent war inside the male mind. Every man carries weight. Some weight is visible. A job, a family, a responsibility, a task that must be completed. But some weight is invisible. The expectation to succeed, the fear of failure, the pressure to provide, the need to appear capable, the belief that others are depending on him. And often, the heaviest weight is not the responsibility itself. It is the belief that he is not allowed to put it down. From the earliest civilizations, men have often been associated with responsibility. They were expected to build, to protect, to provide, to solve problems, to face danger. These expectations created many admirable qualities. They encourage courage, they encourage sacrifice, they encourage service. But every strength has a shadow. The same responsibility that gives a man purpose can also become a burden when carried without support. A man can spend years becoming the person everyone depends on. The person family members call when there is a problem. The person friends trust for advice. The person who remains calm during emergencies. The person who appears to have answers. But eventually, a question may quietly appear. Who do I turn to when I have no answers? The provider. Identity. One of the deepest psychological pressures many men experience is connected to providing. For many men, providing is not simply about money. It is connected to identity. A man may not think, I am having financial difficulties. He may think I am failing. This distinction is important. A problem with circumstances becomes a problem with identity. The external situation says, I lost income. The internal voice says, I lost my value. Throughout history, contributing to the survival of the group gave people a sense of importance. A hunter provided food. A craftsman created valuable goods. A builder created shelter. A protector defended others. Contribution created belonging. The modern world has changed the forms of contribution, but the psychological need remains. Human beings want to feel, I matter. My existence has value. I contribute something meaningful. When a man loses that feeling, the damage can be deeper than financial. He may begin questioning himself. When failure becomes identity, failure is part of every human life. Every successful person has experienced rejection, mistakes, losses, disappointments. The difference is how failure is interpreted. A healthy interpretation, I failed at something. A destructive interpretation, I am a failure. The first statement describes an event. The second attacks identity. Psychologist Alfred Adler studied the human struggle with feelings of inadequacy. Every person experiences moments of feeling behind, moments of weakness, moments where others appear ahead. These feelings can motivate growth, but when they become shame, they can destroy confidence. A man who believes he is failing may begin withdrawing. He may avoid opportunities. He may stop trying, not because he does not care, but because repeated disappointment has convinced him that effort is useless. The pressure to always have answers. Many men grow up believing their role is to solve problems. When something breaks, fix it. When someone struggles, help them. When there is danger, take control. These qualities are valuable, but they create a hidden challenge. A man may become uncomfortable admitting, I don't know, I need help, I am struggling, because he has built an identity around being capable. To admit weakness feels like losing himself. But there is a difference between dependence and connection. A person who refuses all help does not become stronger. A person who understands when to seek support becomes wiser. The success trap. One of the most interesting psychological patterns is that success does not automatically protect a person from depression. Many people assume, when I achieve my goals, I will finally be happy. But after achievement, some people experience emptiness. Why? Because achievement answered, what can I accomplish? But it did not answer, why am I alive? A man can achieve money, recognition, status, professional success, and still feel internally lost. Because success can provide comfort, but meaning provides direction. This connects with Viktor Frankl's ideas. Human beings do not only need pleasure, they need purpose. The inviolable comparison. Modern men also face another burden, comparison. A man does not only compare himself with people around him. Through technology, he compares himself with the entire world. He sees other men's achievements, other men's wealth, other men's relationships, other men's success. but he does not see their struggles, their failures, their private battles. He compares his complete reality with someone else's carefully selected image. And slowly he begins believing, everyone is ahead of me. The weight of expectations. Many men carry expectations from different directions. Family expects success. Society expects achievement. Partners expect stability. Children expect protection. The man himself expects perfection. The problem is not expectations. Expectations can inspire growth. The problem is impossible expectations. The belief, I must never fail. I must always be strong. I must always provide. I must always know what to do. No human being can carry that forever. When the strong man breaks, a dangerous misunderstanding exists. If a man breaks, people assume he was never strong. But this is not true. Sometimes the person who breaks is the person who carried the most. A bridge does not collapse because it was weak. Sometimes it collapses because too much weight was placed on it. The same applies to people. A man can be hardworking, responsible, caring, disciplined, and still reach a point where the weight becomes too much. The important question is not, why did he become weak? The better question is, what burden was he carrying for too long? Redefining strength. A healthier understanding of strength is needed. Strength is not never struggling, never asking questions, never feeling pain, never needing others. Strength is having responsibility and knowing your limits, having courage and admitting fear, supporting others and allowing others to support you, facing reality without surrendering to it. The strongest men throughout history were not men without struggles. They were men who learned how to carry struggles without losing themselves. A man does not need a life without weight. Weight creates strength, but every person needs moments to recover. Even warriors need rest. Even leaders need counsel. Even strong men need someone who asks, how are you really doing? Because the greatest danger is not that a man carries responsibility. The greatest danger is that he carries it alone. Chapter 4: The Lonely Man, a Depressed Man. The silent war inside the male mind. There is a difference between being alone and being lonely. Being alone can be a choice. It can be peaceful. It can be a moment of reflection. But loneliness is different. Loneliness is the feeling that even when people exist around you, nobody truly sees you. Nobody understands you. Nobody knows the thoughts you carry when the world becomes quiet. One of the greatest misunderstandings about men is the belief that men do not need connection. Many men are taught, handle your own problems. Don't depend on others. Figure it out yourself. Independence is valuable. Self-reliance is valuable. But complete isolation is not strength. It is a slow form of suffering. Human beings were never designed to live without connection. For thousands of years, survival depended on belonging. People lived in communities. They worked together. They protected each other. They shared stories. They carried burdens collectively. A person knew, I have a place. I am needed. I belong. Modern society has created incredible freedom. People can move anywhere, work anywhere, communicate instantly across the world. But paradoxically, many people feel more disconnected than ever. A man can have hundreds of contacts in his phone and still have nobody he can call when he is struggling. The difference between friends and brotherhood. Many men have friends, but fewer have brotherhood. Friendship can exist around activities, sports, work, entertainment, shared interests. But brotherhood goes deeper. Brotherhood means, I know your struggles. I know your weaknesses. I know your fears. And I still respect you. Many men have people they can celebrate with, but few people they can suffer with. And this creates a hidden problem. A man learns how to share victories, but not how to share pain. Why men often suffer in silence. Why do many men hesitate to talk about their struggles? There are several reasons. The fear of being judged. A man may worry. What will people think of me? Will they respect me less? Will they see me as weak? The fear of becoming a burden. Many men are comfortable helping others, but uncomfortable receiving help. They think, everyone already has their own problems. I should handle mine. The loss of identity. If a man has always been the strong one, admitting struggle feels threatening. He thinks, if I am not the person who has answers, who am I? The modern loss of male community. Historically, men often developed relationships through shared experiences. They worked together, built together, faced challenges together. These environments created natural opportunities for connection. Today, many men experience life differently. They may work remotely, spend hours online, interact through screens, move frequently, live far from family. Convenience has increased, but shared experiences have decreased. The result: many men are connected digitally but disconnected emotionally. The digital tossed at speed technology can create the illusion of connection. A man can spend hours scrolling, watching videos, reading comments, playing games, communicating online, yet still feel empty. Why? Because information is not the same as intimacy. Communication is not always connection. Seeing people is not the same as being known. A person can know what millions of people are doing, but have nobody who knows what is happening inside them. The dangerous sickle of isolation loneliness often creates a cycle. First, a man feels disconnected. Then he withdraws. Then, because he withdraws, he becomes more disconnected. Then, the loneliness becomes evidence for the belief: nobody cares. The mind begins creating a false conclusion: I am alone because I do not matter. But often the truth is, I am alone because I have stopped allowing people to know me. The mask parts. The lonely man often wears the same mask we discussed earlier. The world sees a man who is busy, a man who is independent, a man who does not need anyone. But underneath, he may be hoping someone notices. Sometimes the person who says, I don't need anyone, is the person who has needed someone for a long time. Robert Putnam and the decline of community. Political scientist Robert Putnam studied the decline of social connection in modern societies. His work explored how communities become weaker when people participate less in shared activities. The result is not only fewer social events, it is a loss of trust, a loss of belonging, a loss of the feeling that we are part of something bigger. For men especially, this matters because many men build relationships through shared purpose. They bond while doing something meaningful together. A mission, a project, a challenge. The importance of brotherhood. A man does not need hundreds of friends. He needs meaningful connections. People who challenge him, people who encourage him, people who tell him the truth, people who remind him who he is when he forgets. The strongest men in history did not walk alone. They had communities, teachers, friends, allies, mentors. Viktor Frankl survived unimaginable suffering partly because he maintained connection and meaning. Nelson Mandela endured decades of imprisonment while holding on to relationships and a larger purpose. Great individuals were never truly alone. Rebuilding connection. A lonely man does not rebuild his life by waiting for people to appear. He begins by taking small steps. Reach out, join communities, create friendships, serve others. Become useful. Connection requires vulnerability, and vulnerability requires courage. A man must risk being seen. Not only the successful version, not only the confident version, the real version. Because people cannot connect with a mask, they can only connect with a human being. The deepest lesson: a man was never designed to carry the entire world alone. Responsibility creates strength, but connection creates endurance. A tree can stand tall because its roots are connected to the ground. A man can stand strong because his life is connected to others. The greatest tragedy is not that a man struggles. Every human being struggles. The tragedy is when a man struggles alone while believing he must continue pretending. The question every man should hear is not, how successful are you? Not, how much can you provide? Not, how strong do you look? But, who knows the real person behind the mask? Because sometimes the first step out of darkness is not finding all the answers. Sometimes it is simply allowing someone else to know that you are in the darkness. Chapter 5. When the mind becomes an enemy, a depressed man. The silent war inside the male mind. The most dangerous battles are not always the ones fought against external enemies. Sometimes the greatest battles happen inside a person's own mind, because the mind is where a person interprets reality. Two people can experience the same event and walk away with completely different conclusions. One person sees difficulty and thinks, this is a challenge I can overcome. Another sees the same difficulty and thinks, this proves I am not capable. The event is the same. The interpretation creates the difference. Depression is not simply feeling sad. Sadness is a natural human emotion. It comes after loss, disappointment, failure, pain. Sadness tells us something important has happened. Depression is different. Depression can change the way a person sees themselves, their future, and the world around them. It can make temporary problems feel permanent. It can make challenges feel impossible. It can convince a person that there is no path forward. The inner voice: every human being has an internal conversation. a voice that interprets experiences. A man loses his job. The external event, I lost employment. The internal voice decides what that means. One interpretation, this is difficult, but I will find another opportunity. Another interpretation, I failed, I am useless, nothing will improve. The problem is not only what happens, the problem is the meaning the mind attaches to what happens. Psychologist Beck studied how patterns of thinking influence depression. His work showed that depression is often connected with negative thinking patterns about the self, the world, the future. This became known as the cognitive triad. The three dark lenses. 1. Negative view of the self. The mind says, I am not enough, I am a failure, I am broken. 2. Negative view of the world. The mind says, people cannot be trusted, life is unfair, nobody cares. 3. Negative view of the future. The mind says, nothing will change, it will always be like this. There is no point trying. When these three perspectives combine, the world becomes a prison created by perception. The trap of shame. One of the most destructive emotions connected with depression is shame. Shame does not simply say, you made a mistake. It says you are the mistake. A man fails financially. The healthy response, I made a poor decision. The shame response, I am a failure. Relationship ends. The healthy response, this relationship did not work. The shame response, I am impossible to love. Shame attacks identity. And when identity is damaged, rebuilding becomes much harder. When pain becomes an identity, a person can suffer so long that suffering becomes part of who they believe they are. They no longer say, I am experiencing depression. They begin believing, I am a depressed person. This distinction matters. A storm is something you experience. It is not who you are. A difficult chapter is not the entire book. Many men become trapped because they confuse their current condition with their permanent identity. Learned helplessness. One of the most important psychological concepts connected to depression is learned helplessness, developed through research by psychologist Martin Seligman. The idea, when people repeatedly experience situations where they believe their actions have no effect, they may eventually stop trying. Imagine a man who experiences repeated setbacks. A business fails, a relationship ends, financial problems continue, opportunities disappear, every attempt seems unsuccessful. Eventually the mind learns, nothing I do changes anything. The tragedy is that even when opportunities appear later, the person may no longer recognize them. The mind has learned surrender. The loss of hope is often misunderstood. Hope is not simply optimism. Hope is the belief that actions can influence the future. A person with hope thinks, my situation is difficult but something can still be done. A person without hope thinks nothing I do matters. This is why rebuilding begins with small actions. Small actions restore evidence. I still have influence. I can still change something. I am not completely powerless. Why depression can look like anger. Many people expect depression to look like sadness. But sometimes pain appears differently. Especially among men, emotional suffering may appear as irritability, frustration, anger, aggression, withdrawal. Why? Because anger often feels more acceptable than vulnerability. A man may find it easier to say, I'm angry, than I'm hurt, I'm afraid, I'm disappointed, I'm overwhelmed. The emotion is not always the real problem. Sometimes the anger is a shield protecting deeper pain. The escape style. When emotional pain becomes overwhelming, people often search for escape. Not because they are weak, because the mind naturally wants relief. Escape may appear through excessive entertainment, alcohol, gambling, unhealthy habits, endless distraction. The cycle becomes pain, escape, temporary relief. More problems, more pain. The solution is not simply removing the escape. The deeper work is understanding the pain that created the need for escape. The mind can become a prison. A depressed man may be physically free but mentally trapped. The prison is built from thoughts. I cannot change. I am not enough. My future is finished. But thoughts are not always facts. The human mind can produce convincing stories that are not true. A person must learn to question, is this reality? Or, is this my pain speaking? Stoicism and control. The ancient Stoics understood this battle thousands of years ago. Marcus Aurelius wrote about the importance of controlling one's judgments. The Stoic principle. You cannot always control what happens, but you can influence how you respond. A depressed mind often focuses on what was lost, what cannot be changed, what others did, what should have happened. Recovery begins by returning 2. What can I do now? What is within my control? What small action can I take today? The first sign of recovery does not begin when all pain disappears. It begins when a person regains a sense of possibility. The moment a man thinks, maybe I can rebuild, something changes. A small light appears. The mind that once said, there is no way forward, begins asking, what is the next step? Because the greatest victory is not immediately solving every problem. The greatest victory is refusing to believe that the problem is the end of the story. A man's darkest battle is often not against the world. It is against the voice inside him telling him that he is already lost. And the beginning of freedom comes when he learns one powerful truth. A thought is not a destiny. A difficult season is not a permanent identity, and darkness is not the end of the journey. Chapter 6: The Meaning of Suffering. A depressed man. The silent war inside the male mind. Every human being eventually meets suffering, no matter how successful someone becomes. No matter how much wealth they accumulate, no matter how carefully they plan their life, there are experiences that cannot be avoided. Loss, failure, rejection, illness, aging, death. The question is not, how can I create a life without suffering? Because such a life does not exist. The deeper question is, how can I remain standing when suffering enters my life? For many people, suffering becomes destructive because it appears meaningless. Pain is difficult, but meaningless pain is even harder to carry. A person can endure great hardship when they believe there is a reason. A soldier can endure danger because of a mission. A parent can endure sacrifice because of love. A person can endure difficulty because they believe something valuable is being built. But when suffering loses meaning, the mind begins asking, why am I going through this? What is the point? Does any of this matter? And this is where many people begin to collapse. Viktor Frankl. The search for meaning. One of the deepest thinkers on suffering was psychiatrist Viktor Frankl. During World War II, Frankl was imprisoned in Nazi concentration camps. He experienced some of the worst suffering humans can endure. He lost his freedom. He lost his possessions. He lost loved ones. He lived in conditions designed to remove human dignity. Many people in his situation would understandably lose all hope. But Frankl noticed something important. Not everyone responded to suffering in the same way. Some people lost their inner strength quickly. Others maintained a sense of purpose even in terrible conditions. Frankl concluded that human beings are not only driven by pleasure or survival, they are also driven by meaning. His greatest insight: a person who has a reason to live can endure tremendous suffering. This changes how we understand depression. A depressed man is often not simply someone who wants pain to disappear. He may be someone who no longer understands why he should continue carrying the pain. The question of purpose. A man can endure difficult circumstances if he knows this struggle is connected to something important. But without purpose, even a comfortable life can feel empty. This explains why some people who achieve success still experience depression. They reached the goal. They obtained what they wanted. But after the achievement, they discovered another question. Now what? Success can answer, what can I achieve? But meaning answers, why does my life matter? Becoming through struggle. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche explored the relationship between suffering and human growth. One of his most famous ideas is, that which does not kill us makes us stronger. But this statement is often misunderstood. Nietzsche was not saying all suffering automatically improves people. Suffering can destroy, it can create bitterness, it can create trauma, it can break people. The deeper lesson is, suffering creates a challenge. The response determines the transformation. Two people experience failure. One says, my life is over. Another says, my life must change. The event is similar. The meaning attached to the event creates different paths. The question is not, why did this happen to me? The more powerful question is, what can this experience teach me? The Stoics. Control what you can. Long before modern psychology, Stoic philosophers studied human suffering. Thinkers such as Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, Epictetus understood that much human suffering comes from fighting reality. The Stoics divided life into two categories: things within our control, our actions, our choices, our character, our attitude; things outside our control, other people's opinions, the past, unexpected events, outcomes we cannot guarantee. A depressed mind often becomes trapped by uncontrollable questions. Why did they leave me? Why did this happen? Why is life unfair? Stoicism does not deny pain. It redirects attention. The question becomes, what can I do with what remains? This is a powerful question, because suffering often takes something away, but rarely does it take everything away. There is usually something remaining, a choice, a decision, a next step. Carl Jung. Facing the shadow, psychologist Carl Jung explored another important dimension of suffering. The hidden parts of ourselves, the emotions we reject, the fears we refuse to acknowledge, the weaknesses we try to hide. He called this the shadow. Many men spend years fighting their own shadow. They reject fear, sadness, insecurity, pain. They believe these emotions make them weak. But what we refuse to acknowledge does not disappear. It controls us from the darkness. A man who refuses to admit fear may become controlled by fear. A man who refuses to admit insecurity may become obsessed with proving himself. A man who refuses to admit pain may become emotionally numb. Growth requires integration. A mature man does not say, "I have no weakness." He says, "I know my weaknesses and they do not control me." The hero's journey across human history. Many stories follow a similar pattern. A person begins in the familiar world, then comes a challenge, then comes darkness, then comes transformation. This pattern appears in ancient myths, religious stories, literature, real human lives. The hero is not transformed because life was easy. The hero is transformed because they faced difficulty. The depressed man's journey can follow the same pattern. The darkness is real. The pain is real, but the darkness does not have to become the final chapter. Responsibility as meaning. One of the strongest ideas connecting psychology and philosophy is responsibility. Psychologist Jordan Peterson often emphasizes that meaning is found through taking responsibility. A person without responsibility can feel empty. A person with meaningful responsibility has direction. Responsibility answers, what requires me? What can I contribute? Who benefits from my existence? A man who has a reason to wake up has something depression struggles to destroy. Purpose. The transformation of pain. The goal is not to love suffering. Suffering is painful. The goal is to transform it. Pain can become wisdom, compassion, strength, understanding. A man who has suffered can become someone who understands others. A man who has faced darkness can become someone who guides others through darkness. The deepest lesson. The opposite of depression is not constant happiness. Life will always contain difficulty. The opposite of depression is connection to meaning. A man who knows who he is, why he continues, what he stands for, what he is responsible for, what he is building can survive seasons that would otherwise destroy him. Because suffering asks every person the same question. Will this pain become the thing that breaks you, or the experience that transforms you? Chapter 7. Men who walk through darkness. A depressed man. The silent war inside the male mind. History often remembers people's victories. It remembers the speeches, the achievements, the moments when everything came together. But history rarely begins with the victory. Before greatness, there is often struggle. Before success, there is often failure. Before the world sees strength, there is often a private battle nobody knows about. The mistake many people make is believing that strong people are people who never experienced darkness. But history tells a different story. Many of the people who changed the world were not people who avoided suffering. They were people who learned how to carry suffering without allowing it to destroy them. Their stories teach us something important. A man's struggle is not proof that he is weak. Sometimes the struggle is the place where character is formed. Viktor Frankl, the man who found meaning in the impossible. Few stories demonstrate the power of meaning more clearly than Viktor Frankl. Before becoming famous for his work on human suffering, Frankl was simply a psychiatrist trying to understand the human mind. Then history placed him in one of humanity's darkest moments. During the Holocaust, Frankl was imprisoned in Nazi concentration camps. He lost his freedom, he lost his possessions, he lost his previous life. He experienced hunger, suffering, fear, and the constant presence of death. In such circumstances, many people would understandably lose hope. But Frankl observed something remarkable. Even in conditions designed to remove human dignity, some people maintained an inner strength. They found reasons to continue. They held on to memories. They held on to love. They held on to future possibilities. Frankl discovered that meaning was not dependent on perfect circumstances. A person could still have purpose even when life became extremely painful. His lesson for the depressed man is powerful. Your circumstances matter. Your pain is real. But your pain is not the complete definition of your existence. A man may lose a job, a relationship, money, status, confidence. But as long as he still has the ability to choose his response, something remains. The question changes from "why is this happening" to "what can I do with what remains?" Abraham Lincoln, the man who carried darkness while carrying responsibility. Abraham Lincoln is remembered as one of history's greatest leaders. But behind the public image was a man who experienced deep personal struggles. Before becoming president, Lincoln experienced political failures, personal losses, periods of sadness, moments of uncertainty. He experienced repeated disappointment. Many people would have allowed those failures to define them. They would have concluded, "This is proof that I am not capable." But Lincoln continued. He continued learning. He continued serving. He continued moving forward. His story reveals an important truth. You do not have to wait until all your struggles disappear before you do meaningful things. Sometimes purpose is discovered while carrying pain. Many people believe, "once I feel better, I will start rebuilding." But often the opposite happens. You begin rebuilding, and through rebuilding you slowly become better. Winston Churchill, the man who fought the Black Dog. Winston Churchill became one of the most important leaders of the 20th century. During World War II, he represented courage and determination during one of history's darkest periods. But privately, Churchill experienced his own battles. He described his depression as a black dog, a shadow that followed him throughout life. This does not mean Churchill was incapable. It reveals something important. A person can struggle internally and still create meaningful things. The myth says, strong people do not suffer. Reality says, strong people suffer too. They simply refuse to surrender completely to suffering. Churchill's story challenges a dangerous belief that a person must be perfect before they can contribute. A wounded person can still create. A struggling person can still lead. A person fighting darkness can still become a source of light. Nelson Mandela, the man who protected his purpose. Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in prison during the struggle against apartheid. 27 years is a long time. Long enough for anger to grow. Long enough for bitterness to take control. Long enough for a person to lose hope. But Mandela maintained a vision beyond himself. His identity was not, "I am a prisoner." His identity remained, "I am fighting for justice." This is the power of purpose. Purpose protects the mind from becoming completely consumed by suffering. A person who has a mission has something stronger than temporary circumstances. Ordinary men who walk through darkness. The stories of famous people inspire us. But the most important stories are often ordinary. The father who loses his job but continues fighting for his family. The man who experiences divorce but chooses to become a better person. The young man who fails repeatedly but refuses to give up. The person recovering from addiction who chooses one more day of discipline. These men may never appear in history books, but their battles are just as real. Every day, ordinary people face invisible wars. The war against hopelessness, the war against shame, the war against fear, the war against the belief that their story is already finished. The common pattern: different men, different centuries, different struggles, but the same principles appear again and again. 1. They did not deny reality. They accepted what happened. They did not pretend the pain was not real. 2. They maintained meaning. They had something worth continuing for. 3. They focused on what they could control. They acted where action was possible. 4. They refused to let circumstances define identity. They understood, what happened to me is not the same as who I am. 5. They served something bigger than themselves, a cause, a family, a nation, humanity, a purpose. The lesson for the depressed man. The lesson is not, just become like Zinchen, just be strong like Mandela. Human suffering is complex. Recovery is not simple. The lesson is deeper. Darkness does not automatically mean the end. A painful chapter does not mean the entire story is finished. A man may enter darkness, but darkness does not have to enter him. The strongest men are not those who never experience suffering. They are those who learn, I have been hurt, but I am not destroyed. I have fallen, but I can rise. I have lost something, but I still have something to give. Because every man eventually faces a moment when life asks him a question. When everything becomes difficult, who will you become? Chapter 8. When a man loses himself, a depressed man. The silent war inside the male mind. There is a type of loss that people rarely talk about. It is not the loss of money. It is not the loss of a possession. It is not even always the loss of another person. It is the loss of identity. The moment when a man looks at his own life and quietly asks, "Who am I now?" Many people believe identity is simply a name, a job, or a collection of achievements. But identity is much deeper. Identity is the story a person tells themselves about who they are. It answers questions like, what do I contribute? What am I capable of? Why do I matter? Where am I going? For many men, identity becomes connected to their work, their achievements, their ability to provide, their reputation, their relationships, their usefulness. These things are not bad. Achievement is valuable. Responsibility is valuable. Providing for others is valuable. The danger appears when a man believes, I am only valuable because of what I produce. Because life eventually tests everyone, there comes a moment when something changes. A career ends. A business fails. A relationship breaks. Health declines. A dream disappears. And suddenly the foundation a man built his identity upon begins to shake. The fall of the provider for many men. Providing is deeply connected to self-worth. A man may spend years believing, my value comes from my ability to take care of others. This can create discipline, it can create ambition, it can create responsibility. But it can also create a dangerous belief. If I cannot provide, I have no value. Imagine a man who loses his job after 20 years. The external reality, he lost employment. But internally, he may experience something much deeper. He may feel, I have lost my purpose. I have lost my respect. I have failed the people who depend on me. The financial problem becomes an identity crisis. When success disappears, success can become a dangerous foundation when it becomes the entire identity of a person. A successful person may become known as the businessman, the expert, the leader, the champion, the person who always wins. But what happens when winning stops? This is why some successful people experience depression after achieving their goals. They spent years climbing the mountain. Then they reached the top and discovered another question waiting. Why was I climbing? Achievement can give a person status, but status cannot always provide meaning. The lost himself. One of the clearest examples is professional athletes. For many athletes, their identity is built from childhood. They are the talented one, the future star, the champion. Their entire life revolves around performance, training, competition improvement, recognition. Then retirement arrives. Suddenly, no training schedule, no crowds, no competition, no external validation. The question becomes, if I am not an athlete anymore, who am I? This is not only an athlete problem. It affects anyone who builds their entire identity around one role. The soldier who leaves the military, the executive who retires, the celebrity whose attention disappears, the parent whose children become independent. The common question, what remains when the role is removed? Divorce and the loss of a future. Another powerful example is relationship loss. A relationship does not only represent another person, it often represents a future, a shared dream, a planned identity. When a marriage ends, a man may lose a partner, a home structure, daily routines, a vision of the future. The pain is not only, I lost someone. It may also be, I lost the person I was becoming. Many men are not prepared for this kind of emotional loss. They know how to solve practical problems. They know how to work. They know how to fix things. But emotional grief requires something different. It requires acceptance, reflection, healing. The danger of running from pain when identity collapses. Some men try to escape. They may search for another source of validation, new relationships, excessive work, material possessions, status, pleasure, distraction. But escape does not rebuild identity. It only delays the rebuilding process. A man cannot discover who he is by constantly avoiding himself. Carl Jung and the second half of life. Carl Jung believed that human development involves a process of becoming whole. Many people spend the first part of life building an external identity, career, reputation, achievement, social acceptance. But eventually, life asks a deeper question. Who are you beyond what the world sees? This is the journey inward. The man begins discovering his values, his weaknesses, his fears, his deeper purpose. The collapse of identity can become painful, but it can also become an invitation to build a more authentic self. The difference between losing a brew and losing yourself. A man can lose a job, a relationship, money, status, a position. But those are roles. They are parts of life. They are not the entire person. A man is not only his income, his achievements, his failures, his mistakes, his past. The tragedy is that many men judge themselves by temporary circumstances. A difficult season becomes a permanent identity. Rebuilding after identity collapse. The first step, separate yourself from what happened. Instead of I failed, say I experienced failure. Instead of I am rejected, say I experienced rejection. Instead of I am broken, say I am going through a process of rebuilding. Language matters because the stories we tell ourselves shape the lives we create. The new identity, a stronger identity, is not built only on achievements. It is built on character. A man who knows I am disciplined, I am responsible, I am capable of learning, I can adapt, I can recover. These qualities cannot easily be taken away because they are not external possessions. They are internal foundations. The deepest lesson, sometimes life removes things from a person not to destroy them, but to reveal what they were depending on. A man who loses everything external may finally discover what was always inside. The question is not, what did I lose? The deeper question is, who can I become now? Because the man who rebuilds after losing himself often becomes stronger than the man who never had to rebuild. He develops something that success alone cannot provide: wisdom, humility, resilience, understanding. A man may lose his old identity, but that does not mean he has lost his future. Sometimes the collapse of the old self is the beginning of the creation of a better one. Chapter 9: Rebuilding the Man. A depressed man. The silent war inside the male mind. A man does not rebuild himself in a single moment. There is rarely a dramatic turning point where everything suddenly becomes clear. Most transformations happen quietly. One decision, one habit, one conversation, one step forward, repeated again and again until a different person begins to emerge. When a man has experienced depression, failure, loss, or identity collapse, the temptation is often to ask, how do I become the person I was before? But sometimes the better question is, who am I capable of becoming after everything I have experienced? Because rebuilding is not about returning to the past. The past version of a person may have been built on fragile foundations. The goal is not simply to repair what was broken. The goal is to build something stronger. The first station, dipping responsibility. One of the most powerful moments in a man's life is when he stops asking, why did this happen to me? And begins asking, what can I do now? This does not mean blaming yourself for everything. Life contains events outside our control. People experience loss, injustice, unexpected circumstances, pain they did not choose. Responsibility does not mean I caused everything. Responsibility means I still have a role in what happens next. A man begins rebuilding when he realizes, my past influenced me, but it does not have to control me. The second station, restoring self-reliance, trust. Many depressed men lose something deeper than happiness. They lose trust in themselves. They stop believing, I can handle challenges. I can make good decisions. I can change. Self-trust is not rebuilt through motivation alone. It is rebuilt through evidence. A man begins proving to himself, I keep my promises. I can complete difficult tasks. I can face discomfort. This is why small actions, making the bed, exercising, learning a skill, completing responsibilities, creating structure, these actions may appear insignificant, but psychologically, they send a powerful message. I am still someone. In Act Their third station. Discipline over mood. One of the greatest traps of depression is waiting to feel better before acting. A man thinks, when I have motivation, I will start, but often motivation comes after action, not before. Discipline means I do what matters even when my emotions are not cooperating. This principle appears throughout history. The Stoics practiced discipline. Warriors practiced discipline. Athletes practiced discipline. Successful people practice discipline. Not because discipline removes difficulty, because discipline creates stability during difficulty. A man who has structure has something to hold on to when emotions become chaotic. The fortation, rebuilding the body. The mind and body are not separate worlds. A damaged body affects the mind. A damaged mind affects the body. Physical rebuilding can become psychological rebuilding. Exercise teaches I can tolerate discomfort. Sleep teaches I value myself. Nutrition teaches I care about my future. The goal is not appearance. The deeper goal is restoring a relationship with oneself. A man who takes care of himself is sending a message. My life is worth protecting. The fifth station, finding purpose again. A man without purpose can feel lost even when life is comfortable. Purpose gives direction. It answers, what am I building? What responsibility belongs to me? What contribution can I make? Viktor Frankl demonstrated that meaning is one of the strongest forces in human survival. A person with meaning can endure difficulty. Purpose does not have to be something grand. It can be raising children well, building a skill, serving a community, creating something valuable, helping others, living according to principles. A meaningful life is not necessarily an easy life. It is a life worth carrying. The sixth station, building brotherhood again. A man cannot rebuild completely in isolation. The belief, I will fix myself alone, often keeps people trapped. Strong men throughout history had support. They had mentors, friends, teachers, communities, families. A man does not become weaker because he needs others. He becomes wiser because he understands human nature. The question is not, do I need anyone? The question is, who are the right people to walk with me? The seventh temptation, learning emotional maturity. The goal is not becoming emotionless. An emotionless person is not strong. A person who cannot feel cannot fully connect. Emotional maturity means, I can experience emotions without being controlled by them. A mature man can say, I am angry, but I will respond wisely. I am afraid, but I will still act. I am hurt, but I will not let pain define me. This is true strength. The eightation, serving something greater. One of the most powerful transformations happens when a person moves beyond constant self-focus. Depression often traps the mind inside. My problems, my failures, my pain. Service expands the world again. Helping others reminds a person, my existence has value. A man who guides another struggling person discovers, my suffering gave me understanding. Pain can become useful. A scar can become a source of wisdom. The rebuilt man is not a perfect man. He still has struggles, he still has fears, he still has difficult days. But something has changed. He no longer sees difficulty as proof that he is broken. He sees difficulty as something he can face. He understands, I am not my worst moment. I am not my failure. I am not my pain. He has developed something deeper than confidence. He has developed character. Confidence says, I believe I can succeed. Character says, even when I fail, I will continue. The final transformation, the man who enters darkness often searches for the person he used to be. But sometimes life is not asking him to return. Sometimes life is asking him to transform. The old identity may have been based on approval, achievement, appearance, external success. The new identity is built on meaning, responsibility, discipline, wisdom, service. A man does not become strong because life becomes easy. He becomes strong because he learns that even when life becomes difficult, he still has the ability to choose his next step. The journey back begins with one decision. Not to deny the darkness, not to surrender to the darkness, but to walk through it. Because the man who rebuilds himself after falling discovers something powerful. The thing that almost destroyed him became the experience that revealed who he truly was. Chapter 10, the man will parse a depressed man. The silent war inside the male mind. Every journey into darkness eventually reaches a moment of choice. A person can remain trapped by what happened, or they can begin building what comes next. The difference is not that one person experiences pain and another does not. Everyone experiences pain. The difference is what they decide that pain means. For some people, suffering becomes a prison. It becomes the explanation for everything. Because I was hurt, I cannot love. Because I failed, I cannot succeed. Because I lost something, my life is finished. But for others, suffering becomes a teacher. Not a teacher they wanted. Not a teacher they asked for, but a teacher that forces them to discover something deeper, who they really are. The man who returns from darkness is not the same man who entered it, and that is the point. Transformation is not about becoming who you were before suffering. It is about becoming someone wiser because you survived it. The old idea of strength. For a long time, many men were taught that strength meant one thing: never show weakness, never admit fear, never ask for help, never reveal pain. But this definition of strength is incomplete. A man who hides every wound may appear strong, but inside he may be slowly falling apart. Real strength is not pretending that pain does not exist. Real strength is having the courage to face reality, to look at yourself honestly and say, I am struggling, I need to change, I need help, I need to rebuild. The strongest person is not the person who never falls. It is the person who refuses to remain on the ground. The man worships himself. One of the greatest battles a man faces is the battle against himself. Many men spend years fighting their own identity. They reject their past. They hate their mistakes. They are ashamed of their weaknesses. But healing begins when a man understands, I am not perfect, but I am still valuable. Acceptance does not mean giving up. Acceptance means seeing reality clearly. A man cannot change what he refuses to acknowledge. The person who accepts his wounds can treat them. The person who hides his wounds allows them to grow. The man who finds meaning. Viktor Frankl's greatest lesson was that human beings can endure tremendous suffering when they have meaning. A man does not need a perfect life. He needs a reason to continue. Meaning can be found in the family he protects, the work he creates, the people he helps, the principles he follows, the person he is becoming. A man with purpose wakes up differently. He may still struggle. He may still have difficult days. But he knows, my life is connected to something important. The man who takes responsibility. Responsibility is often misunderstood. Some people see responsibility as a burden. But responsibility can also be a source of meaning. A man who has responsibility has something that requires him, something that needs his effort, something that benefits from his existence. This is why purpose and responsibility are connected. A meaningless life asks, why am I here? A purposeful life asks, what must I do? The man reconnects. The journey back is not only internal. Humans need other humans. A man may need a friend, a mentor, a brother, a family member, a community. The belief that a man must handle everything alone is one of the most destructive ideas. Even the strongest people in history had support. A tree does not become weaker because it has roots. Its roots are the reason it survives storms. Human beings are the same. Connection is not weakness. Connection is foundation. The man who controls his mind. A man cannot control everything that happens to him. He cannot control the past, other people's decisions, every circumstance, every outcome. But he can influence his response, his actions, his habits, his character. The Stoics understood this thousands of years ago. A person becomes free when they stop giving complete power over their inner life to external events. A difficult experience may enter your life, but it does not have to become your identity. The scared man. A scar tells a story. It says there was a wound, but it also says the body survived. The same is true psychologically. A man who has suffered carries evidence of battles. But those battles do not make him less valuable. They may make him wiser, more compassionate, more understanding. The man who has known darkness can recognize darkness in others. The man who has experienced pain can become someone who helps others heal. The final lesson. The world often asks men, how much money do you make? How successful are you? How powerful are you? How many achievements do you have? But perhaps the deeper questions are, can you face yourself honestly? Can you carry responsibility without losing yourself? Can you love despite being hurt? Can you continue despite difficulty? Can you become better because of what happened to you? A man's greatest victory is not defeating every enemy outside himself. His greatest victory is becoming the kind of person who cannot be destroyed by every difficulty life brings. Because life will always contain storms. There will be losses. There will be disappointments. There will be moments when everything feels uncertain. The goal is not to create a man who never enters darkness. The goal is to create a man who knows how to find his way back. The depressed man is not a finished man. The struggling man is not a useless man. The wounded man is not a worthless man. A difficult chapter is not the end of the story. Every sunrise proves something important. Darkness is temporary. Every wound proves something important. Healing is possible. Every man who rises proves something important. A person can be broken by life and still rebuild. The final question is not, what happened to you? The final question is, after everything you have been through, who will you choose to become? Because the strongest man is not the man who never suffers. The strongest man is the one who suffers, learns, rebuilds, and returns with greater wisdom than before.